Well, welcome along to Snetterton, everybody. We've got the first of our two Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli races coming up for you. The cars already are on the grid, having qualified over the course of this morning, and in both Class 1 and Class 2, the championships are still very much up for grabs. We'll have to see what happens in this first of two races that's coming up. Round 13 of the championship this will be. So that's the cars head off on their formation lap. Let me just guide you through the way that they line up. Fastest times from qualifying count for this grid that we see now. Their second fastest times from qualifying count for the race that we'll see later on over the course of this afternoon that will conclude their 2023 championship season. So then the way that they line up is that Bill Caley is on pole position, and alongside him is Mark McAleer. Row 2 of the grid is James Caley and multiple champion Pete Morris, who is leading the championship on overall scores but take dropped scores into account, and he no longer leads. It's Chris Dyer, who has got Jim Bryan for company on row number 3, and row 4, Peter Evans and Paul Simpson line up there on the 4th row of the grid. As we move on to row number 5, Oliver Chatham is there on the inside of the 5th row with Andy Toon for company, and then it's Cole Hazelton and Darren Labette that sit there on the 6th row of the grid. Row 7 of the grid is Julian Morris and Angus Archer, with Paul Seagrave, who had a problem in qualifying with the oil filler cap having come off his car, and a little bit of oil spilt onto the exhaust, so the fire extinguishment was put on it. Car's fine, he's fine. He lines up there on the 8th row of the grid. Alongside him is Brian Richardson, and at the tail end of the field should be Tom Atherton, who starts at the tail end of the field. Well, we're getting to that stage of the season, the final races, where drop scores come into account. It's a 14-round championship. You count your best 12 scores. There's also extra points for pole position, extra points for fastest lap, extra points for the number of people that enter your particular class, and then you beat them in the race. So it all gets quite mathematically complicated. Peter Morris is on 356 points, but is dropping the best part of nearly 50. So he actually has a net score of 308, whereas Mark McAleer, who has had 2 poor finishes so far this year, is on a gross score of 340, but he drops less. So he actually is on 328 when you take the drops into account. So all of a sudden, Mark McAleer is right back in the championship hunt, Piers, but what he can't afford over the course of these 2 races here is another poor finish, because then he's got 3 poor finishes and he's going to have to count one of them towards his tally.
Yeah, I'll let you take a break there, Mark, with all those permutation combinations. I can see there was a lot going on upstairs there, but yes, exactly this with the bonus points, it does make things a little more tricky to work out than potentially, you know, a standard format. But it's a good format because it gives you incentives and it keeps things interesting right until that final race of the season. We've seen a good season of racing. We've covered a lot of it together, haven't we, Mark? And we've had some good races in all of the classes, right up and down the field. And I'm hoping for another one here again today at Snetterton. Snetterton this type of car tends to sort of give nice close racing, because there's a lot of different types of corners. You've got long straights, you've got heavy braking zones, you've got sort of fast corners. Yeah, it's got a bit of everything.
Well, let's wait and see as to what happens. There is Tom Atherton at the tail end of the field, just making his way round in that beautifully prepared Porsche Cayman. We have a mixture of Caymans and Boxsters. Boxsters in Class 2, Caymans in Class 1, but then of course we have the 996s and the 997s. Now they're all different powers coming out of the car, power outputs, and therefore they're all ballasted and weighted differently. So the cars with more power, like the 997s, have to run a heavier curb weight. So it equalises them all over the course of their performance. However, a heavier car is always going to use its tyres a little bit more. In Class 1, you're allowed a brand new set of slicks every race meeting. In Class 2, it's every second race meeting. So we'll wait and see as to what happens here. A little bit of smoke just coming from the car that had the problem in qualifying. That's just probably just a little bit of residual oil sitting around somewhere with the oil filler cap having blown off. But 25 minutes are on the clock. We're about to get round 13 of the Porsche Club Championship underway here, and it is going to be Bill Caley's car that starts from pole position. The Cayman with the blacked out lights at the front is the way to tell his green and gold car. Lights are on the gantry. They go off now, and it looks as though it wasn't a bad start from Mark McAleer in the Porsche 997 from the outside of the front row of the grid. Has he got the jump on the Cayman of Bill Caley? The answer is yes, he has. So Mark McAleer picks up the lead of the race. It's Bill Caley in second place. James Caley slots in 3rd place, and then it looks as though it's Chris Dyer that's there in 4th place, going wheel to wheel with the green machine in the hands of Jim Bryan, as they have all, I think, safely made it through the first corner. They're all concertinaing up through the second, but they're all through that as well comfortably.
Yeah, it was a wall of Porsche coming towards turn 1 with a staggered 2x2 start, which always produces good racing on the first few corners. But so far, everyone through safely. There might have been a bit of rubbing and racing here and there, but everyone's made it through the first. Oh!
We've lost one, unfortunately. That's Peter Evans that we've lost.
Sorry, Peter.
Big spin for Peter Evans, and he hugely delayed Pete Morris there by the look of things, who might have got tangled up in that one. So Pete Morris, who, remember, mathematically is at the moment leading the championship on gross scores, now right the way down at the tail end of the field, and has got work to do.
Not exactly, in fact, exactly not what he would have wanted to do at the first, or happened to him in the first start. But good to see all the cars continuing on without too much lasting damage.
Yeah, that's a close call, that one. This is Jim Bryan, who's coming under enormous pressure from Chris Dyer, who sits behind him. Chris Dyer looking to see whether he can muster something and try and squeeze his way through. I think Andy Toon was the next that was just behind that, but it's Mark McAleer that leads the pack down in towards Brundle and Nelson for the first time, with the Caley family, Bill and James, sitting there in second and third position as they descend into the braking area. But Brundle and Nelson will pick up what's going on in the lead of Class 2. It was Paul Simpson who was quickest in qualifying in Class 2, but has he picked up the Class 2 lead? I'm not sure he has at this stage. There's Cole Hazelton, he's coming under pressure from the car that sits behind him, which is Angus Archer. So Cole Hazelton, who was, I think, second quickest, was he not? No, third quickest of the Class 2 cars, is a little bit further down in the Class 2 order in the early stages.
Race just settling down now. I think the drivers after the first start, a couple of cars spinning in the second sector. Oh, is that something that flip off the back of the car in second place, or was that just the lighting that I saw there?
Couldn't quite see that. I was more focused on the fact that the passenger window on the race leader's car is coming adrift slightly.
As is the passenger window on the car we're looking at right now, the red.
Chris Dyer's,
yeah. Chris Dyer, right on the back of the green machine, also looking at the inside and then having to go to the outside of the Wilson hairpin.
Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. And then right behind them is Andy Toon. So Andy Toon looking to try and draw his Cayman alongside Chris Dyer's. The two former champions absolutely wheel to wheel. Andy Toon backs out of it as they head round through the left-hander at Palmer. Doesn't want to get involved at this early stage of the weekend, so concentrates his efforts on getting a good exit coming out of Palmer and on towards Agostini. In the background we are also side by side as well, and that, by the look of things, is going to be at the sharp end of Class 2. It's the number 88 car that leads Class 2, Paul Simpson, coming under attack from Oliver Chatham, who's second in Class 2. Yeah,
those two fighting for class honours, and they're separated by almost nothing, and they're still fighting all the way through the field. It's something I mentioned at the top of the show, wasn't it? That there's so many different classes of cars, and the cars are all so close together. It's a very healthy grid in this Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli, and it's good to see them still racing even to the last few rounds of the season, close to door to door, bumper to bumper.
Yeah, well, Oliver Chatham and Paul Simpson are the two drivers that are fighting out, not just in this race for the lead of Class 2, but for the lead of the Class 2 Championship overall. I make it that Oliver Chatham is on 327 after drops, and it's 323 for Paul Simpson after you take their dropped scores, their worst two scores, into account. So there's still scores to be settled out there as we concentrate our efforts at the moment on the battle for 4th and 5th place. Jim Bryan under attack from the Cayman of Chris Dyer, who almost got out of shape a little bit coming out of the bomb hole there, but is still right on the coattails of the 996 that lies ahead.
That's about as close as you want to get into the very, very fast entry of Coram there. You just rub on the brakes, more to just settle the car than actually slow down, and it's just bringing in the car behind the orange and the orange bumpered white car as well.
Andy Toon, yeah.
Andy Toon, of course it is, yeah. Andy Toon's right. He's going to be licking his lips seeing these two going hammer and tongs. It's going to be a three-way fight for the final place in the top 5.
Yeah, Andy Toon's is exactly the same on his. The Perspex door glasses on these cars just look as though they're struggling with them. I'm not sure whether it's just the way the wind is blowing or it's filling the car with pressurised air and it's just popping the window out of its seal. But that's another one where the window's just flapping around slightly. But good little fight for 4th, for 5th, for 6th. All Class 1 cars at this stage. But it's the 996 of Jim Bryan that leads the two Caymans that sit behind. And into the pit lane comes the number 24 car of Cole Hazelton, I'm afraid. And that looks as though his race potentially may well be done.
Yeah, it's a shame. So one of the drivers fighting for those top 5 positions runs wide on the exit of the third corner, and you can see some differing lines, both the Wilson hairpin and the Agostini hairpin, between these three drivers. It seems as if Bryan has a sort of a narrower entry, and Dyer and Toon going sort of a wide, slow in, fast out sort of tactic, and lap time's almost identical. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that changes as they position the cars for a fight.
And just behind them, and this here now, is the lead battle for Class 2, which is still going the way of Paul Simpson, but he's still got right on his tailpipe Oliver Chatham, so the two of those still busy beavering away to see as to who might scoop up top points, which is 25 points for the win, 21 for second, 18 for third, and so on. It diminishes. So 19 minutes to go. Mark McAleer leads Bill Caley from James Caley, then the battle of Jim Bryan, Chris Dyer and Andy Toon, and then this battle here, which is the next one up, which is going to be for 7th and 8th place, but more importantly the lead of Class 2, and Paul Simpson having to stick his elbows out to try and hang on to it still at this stage. Himself and Oliver Chatham have been pretty much inseparable over the course of the season, hence why coming into this weekend, taking drop scores into account, there's only 4 points between them. And
also we've got Dyer again looking to see if he could throw out the inside of the last corner, but actually ending up compromising his own exit, and now Toon is probably going to be the closer of the two drivers to making a manoeuvre, and you can see already, is that Dyer defending? I think it is, or no, it's not actually, that is Toon just showing his nose with that, again, that the left hand mirror flap, not mirror, left hand window flapping in the wind.
Yeah, the car ahead, Chris Dyers, isn't flapping quite to the same degree, but they're both, yeah, sort of just coming out of where they ought to sit in that recess. So 4th, 5th, 6th all still together. Mark McAleer out front with a new fastest lap of the race last time through. 2 minutes 4.321 for the man who, when you take drop scores into account, is leading the championship. And we're talking about at the moment he's leading the Class 1 championship. If we look at what the drop score position is across Class 1 and Class 2, well, at the moment, Mark McAleer, who leads Class 1 and leads this race, is on 328 points in drop scores. Oliver Chatham, who is second in this race in Class 2 but leads the Class 1 standings, is on 327 championship points. So if you're looking for an overall champion across Class 1 and Class 2, point between them.
So close, so ridiculously close, considering it's 300 or so points over the championship.
And I'm going to correct myself now as well, because Oliver Chatham, did he pick up pole? No, he didn't. No, neither of them picked up pole.
Okay.
So yeah, it could come down to fastest lap, and it's even more important that Oliver Chatham maybe tries to get past Paul Simpson and pick up the lead of Class 2 if he can.
Yeah, because that would help his overall championship fight as well. We can see pushing hard was Caley on the exit of Nelson Corner, right up to the curb, leaving some tyre marks. Clearly doesn't need to do too much tyre saving at this stage of the race weekend. Thinks he's got enough underneath him because he's not saving any or not leaving anything on the table there.
Yeah, just to remind you, Class 1 competitors are allowed a maximum of 1 set of new tyres for every race meeting. Those are in Class 2, a maximum of 1 set for every second race meeting. But on the basis there's 7 race meetings over the course of a season, they'll have probably used the same tyres at Silverstone and Brands and bolted 4 brand new ones off for this weekend.
Yeah,
so they're all likely to have new tyres for this one.
Yeah, it would make sense, and it's probably a good thing because front left gets a bit of a hammering around Snetterton with the fast Riches. Then you've got the heavy braking and turning right for Wilson. Then you've also got is it Wilson? Yeah, and then Williams onto the back straight, which is, hurts tyres, and then of course Bumhole and Coram, which you're literally leaning that front left for seconds, tens of seconds at a time, which is what that cumulative heat build is really what wears the tyres down.
We're picking up on windows flapping around in cars, but have a look underneath the car of Pete Morris, who is just ahead of the Class 2 leaders now as he's trying to thread his way back through the order. There's something just dragging from underneath. It might just be a little bit of a heat shield or something like that. There's certainly something underneath the car of number 2, Pete Morris, multiple champion in Porsche racing over the years. You might just be able to see it from this shot here. Camera might not be quite low,
yes,
but there's definitely something, isn't there?
Yeah, on the left-hand side, under sort of almost exactly where underneath the passenger seat. I think probably right in some sort of heat shielding or something like that.
But most of the heat shield will be at the back of a Porsche. That's at the front. Yeah, so I don't know. Just something I spotted. That was all.
Good spot, Mark. We'll keep an eye on that, and well, it's clearly not slowing him down at the moment because he's holding station for now as these two behind do battle. He'll probably be able to hear it rubbing on the ground and be hoping that it's not something critical.
Yeah, what is critical is that Oliver Chatham needs to try and pick up the lead of Class 2 if he can, because at the moment he's having to settle for second best because he's got Paul Simpson just ahead of him. We've got this great fight going on for 4th, 5th and 6th. Jim Bryan, Chris Dyer, Andy Toon, the 996 still leading the pair of Caymans that sit behind. All neat and tidy stuff between them all as well. Maybe Andy Toon just running slightly wider coming out of Nelson, but they're all still together as they head through the bomb hole for the 5th time, with the fastest lap of the race and the extra championship point now going in the direction, not of race leader Mark McAleer anymore, but Bill Caley in 2nd place. But McAleer comes over the start-finish line, chalks lap number 5 into the book, and he goes quicker again. So that fastest lap of the race, extra championship point, it's bouncing around at the moment.
Yeah, and it was literally pretty much nicked at the last sector, because it was a yellow from McAleer in sector 1 and 2, and then had a purple overall best in sector number 3, which just nipped in the fastest lap by less than a tenth or so. But that gap of 1.9 seconds is very much stable at the moment, because last lap times were only a tenth or two different between McAleer in 1st and then Bill Caley in 2nd.
As it stands at the moment, drop scores taken into account, Mark McAleer, if he stays where he is in this race, would be on 375 championship points. Pete Morris would be on 346. That's going to show the impact of him spinning towards the tail end of the field. And in Class 2, Oliver Chatham and Paul Simpson would be separated by just a single championship point. Paul Simpson, because he's leading Class 2 in this race, he'd go on drop scores to 368. Oliver Chatham would be on 367. So
close, and so many permutations and combinations, and we love to see it, because close championships is what brings such good racing, or shows that there's such close and good racing. And we've seen it lots of times this year. It's been very close. We've had multiple class winners, we've had overall winners as well. Mark McAleer looks like he's on course, should nothing go wrong, to take another win, and he's soldiering on. Clearly that car is coming towards him. Purple 1st sector, purple 2nd sector. I believe if the final sector is anything decent, we're going to have another even better fastest lap of the race. So we're going to beat a 2:03.950, which is the current fastest lap.
Yeah, so Mark McAleer's already had 3 wins so far this season. Chris Dyer's got a bit of a run, has he, this time on Jim Bryan, but he is still not going to be able to do anything, so it's still the 996 that's holding off the attack of the Caymans from behind. And all the time closing in on those. Keep an eye towards, just off the back of them, Pete Morris at the wheel of the number 2 car is edging ever closer to this little trio that lie ahead. And I think Jim Bryan is probably the slower car at the moment. I think Chris Dyer would be quicker. The problem is he just can't get by.
Yeah, that's the thing. Catching is one thing, passing is another, and you can see once again closing up at the last corner is closing up at the last corner, and it's not quite getting the move done. And I think that green machine seems to be pretty quick in a straight line, which is just giving him enough to not have to defend into the big heavy braking zones. Like here, for example, Rich is a bit of a braking zone, then into Wilson. All you got to do is just get those braking zones covered off, and if you don't have to defend, you're at such an advantage. Although looking at the inside now, I think that's more of a feint than an actual attempt at an overtake, and potentially even defending from Toon behind. Yeah,
so Chris Dyer, the 2021 champion, still bottled up behind Jim Bryan. Andy Toon is another former champion. He was a champion back in 2014, just hanging station off those and ever edging in towards shot, the Porsche 997 of multiple champion, which is Pete Morris. Pete Morris won this championship back in, what was it, 18 and 14. He was C1 champion back, 19, 15, 14, 12, 2004.
Wow.
He's won so many championships in Porsche racing, and if these three squabble anymore, he will close up. And I would imagine, he might pick off Andy too. Chris Dyer, I think, will make it very easy for him to get through, because they are teammates. They're both being run by Strage and years. So I think if he gets up towards the red Porsche Cayman, I think Andy Toon will let him through, let his teammate through.
Yeah, I think it's almost a when, not an if Morris gets through here, because his fastest lap and last, which was also his last lap, at 2:05.6, only half a second and a bit away from our fastest lap of the race, but also pretty much 2 seconds of that faster than the next 3 cars ahead, who have set almost identical lap times. They're inseparable on circuit, but also in lap time.
And does that happen sometimes as a driver, and you just you end up sort of just sitting in the same zone as the driver ahead of you, actually, when you could have more pace and you ought to try something, and you just end up sort of not wanting to compromise the start of a weekend. You just sit there and you try and do the maths and think, well, I don't want to damage the car, we've got another race to go later on, and you almost think that you can't go any quicker. You
can definitely overthink it, that's for certain, and almost sometimes it's, if you've been sat behind a car since the start of the race and not quite been able to get through, it's much harder to get past if you were in the same position but had caught from 3 seconds back.
Yeah.
You'd think, oh, I'll just get past them soon, even if you actually had the same underlying pace in the car, because as you say, you can just get yourself into a bit of a groove and maybe follow the car ahead, and if you're in clear air then you just exploit a bit more, and sometimes a bit of dirty air from the car in front can unsettle you and make the car feel a bit different to how you expect, which can knock a bit of confidence from you as well. And there's number 22 coming back through the field after a spin on the first lap with a good returning drive.
Brilliant livery on that one as well.
Yeah.
It's almost sort of comet down the side of the car, isn't it? The livery of it. So it really does look very, very nice indeed. Darren Lebet still under pressure as well. He's still got Angus Archer right beside him. Then we get the car of Peter Evans trying to carve its way through the order. There is number 10. That's Julian Morris at the wheel of his distinctively liveried car. So all the way down through the order, we've got some good fights. And this one's been raging for quite some time as well, isn't it? Darren Lebet still busy beavering away with Angus Archer. Those two have been pretty inseparable so far in this race.
Yeah, they have, in different classes, but fighting like they're fighting, they're just fighting ahead, because I suppose it's a good thing that you can fight the cars that aren't in your class so closely, so you've pretty much always guaranteed a race in this championship, which we're seeing being played out on a number of different places on the circuit right now. And I don't think Evans is going to back off anytime soon. If he can get that place, he absolutely will.
So let's just see whether he can do anything. Angus Archer to close up, back towards the squabble of 4th, 5th and 6th place, which has now been joined by 7th place. So Pete Morris was closing, ever closing, and a man from the Midlands now has fully caught up with Andy Toon, who used to race within the same team as Pete Morris, if memory serves me correctly, until a few seasons ago. So the 997 has caught up with the Cayman. You can still see whatever it is just dragging itself underneath Pete Morris's car. Certainly doesn't seem to be affecting the performance, whatever it is, Piers.
No, certainly not affecting the performance, but you can certainly see it from the rear shot. Oh, wide goes Toon out of the last corner. That's going to leave him certainly vulnerable to Morris. I think if Morris is close enough, if we can, once we flip to this, yes, Morris is going to have a look for a move going to the outside of turn 1, which is an unorthodox place to go, but clearly Toon was defending and he's got that place done. So that is one more place ticked off for Morris in his championship challenge.
Yep, so that's an extra point. And now the next car is the one I was saying I think he might make it fairly easy for his teammate to get through here, because Chris Dyer and Pete Morris race for the same team. Now, Pete Morris mathematically is still more than within a shout for the championship, and a little bit of assistance from your teammate wouldn't go amiss, because for Chris Dyer, he lies 4th in the Class 1 standings coming into this weekend. Take his drop scores into account and he falls slightly further away in terms of the mathematics for it. So is he going to do the teammate thing and let Pete Morris through? He doesn't need to, you know, he's having his own race, he's paying his own money to be out there, so doesn't need to do his teammate any favours, does he?
Yeah, Toon pushing on hard as well. You saw sliding out of that corner, but I think that Dyer's unlikely to make it very easy for Toon. I think he's going to jump up for Morris. I don't think he's going to jump out of the way, but I think if Morris can get a good exit, then there's a bit of an overlap, then potentially Dyer might make it that's just that little bit easier to get through, because he'll see that Morris has come to the field, he'll know the situation, probably they will have chatted in terms of the championship. So is this that move happening right now? It looks like it might be. No, just Morris making his presence known, headlights on.
Well, for the moment he's not quite close enough, is he really? He still needs to close up a little bit more. But yeah, Chris maybe could have blended out the throttle down there if he's going to let him through, but I say, why should he? You know, they are paying their own money to be out there and race, and whilst the cars are prepared and run by the same team, you don't necessarily have to let anybody through. And for Chris Dyer, he's still trying to pick off Jim Bryan if he can. It looks like the Cayman's got a reasonable run on the 996 that lies ahead. And here's a classic example of this championship and the fact that the more powerful cars, which have to run a heavier curb weight, works, because we've got 996 fighting away with Cayman, getting caught by 997.
There you go. That's not a good advert for the championship. No matter which car you've got, then I don't know what is. And that's, you know, shown throughout the field. I mean, it's a 997 leading a Cayman at the front of the field, then 97, 96 Cayman, 97 Cayman. Then you've got a group of Boxsters in of course Class 2, and this may be the move for Morris. Has he got an overlap? No, not this time. Just so there's that theory out the window, Mark. I
think so. Yeah. We'll scrunch up that piece of paper and throw it in the bin. We might need to refer to it later on in the race, though, because there's still 5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, case in point, there's no one single model of Porsche, whether it be the 996, the 997, or the Cayman, that is obviously dominant, because they're all spread around the field.
And the lap times, even the lap times at the front of the field, the 997 and McAleer at the front of the field, fastest lap, 2:03.9. Second is a Porsche Cayman from Bill Caley, 2:04.0. So 1/10 over a 2-minute lap.
Yeah.
How long is it around here? It's like 5 kilometers. No, 6 kilometers.
It's nearly 3 miles, 3.96 miles.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it's not much difference, is it really?
No, absolutely. But they'll all work that tyre differently as well, and the amount of drop-off will vary as well because of the weight and the cornering pressures that you're putting on the tyres as well. So Pete Morris still hasn't been able to squeeze his way through and ahead of Chris Dyer. Chris Dyer just dips a wheel onto the curb coming out of Williams. Now, dipping a wheel onto the curb isn't going to slow him down, but if he had to throttle off as a result of potentially of running wide, that might do. As they head down in towards Brundle and Nelson, is Pete Morris going to go through? Yes, he does. So Pete Morris goes through and ahead of Chris Dyer, who didn't put up too much of a fight that time through. So the 997 goes ahead of the Cayman, and now for Pete Morris, the next target is the 996 of Jim Bryan that lies ahead.
Yeah, this again won't be easy because there's no team orders there whatsoever. Different team, and I was just thinking, I was having a quick look at the race control messages. Doesn't look like any of the drivers have received a track limits warning as far as I can see, because I was just thinking with these drivers pushing on hard and just dropping wheels maybe over the back curves here and there. Oh, fighting much further down the field. That is the 52 of Lebet holding off Archer just about. Is that Archer? Yeah, it is Archer trying to have a look at the inside of Brundle but not being able to get it done. Right behind them, Evans getting involved and thinking, whoa, bomb hole is not normally a place you can throw out the inside, but that will definitely leave Archer vulnerable.
Yeah, well, I think he was trying to do anything to try and put off Darren Lebet, but yeah, he's left himself very vulnerable from the Class 1 car that sits behind of Peter Evans. So even if Peter Evans gets through and ahead of these two Boxsters that lie ahead, it's not going to affect the championship points scoring for any of them, because it's the points that you finish in your class and the position that you finish that work out the championship scoring ultimately. Got 3 minutes to go. Mark McAleer has already, our race leader, completed 10 laps. He's on his 11th lap of the race now, leads by nearly 4 seconds as well. We do finally have a warning flag going out though, Piers, and that's for Andy Toon.
Yeah, Andy Toon's got, whoa, big cut back at turn 1. Evans going very deep into riches and nearly getting collected, but it's good driving from Archer to cut back underneath and just missed the rear of Evans' car.
Yeah, so another moment for the car of Peter Evans. He's got behind him now the car that had those problems in qualifying, which is Paul Seagrave's car, which was smoking a little bit on the grid. That's the car that had the oil filler cap pop off in qualifying, caused a small little fire in the car. There was no real damage done, but the marshals had to put extinguishant on it, and that was why he's further down the grid than he would have wished, and that's why that car was just smoking a little bit at the start, but he's burnt off that oil now and he's going well. He's still under pressure though, isn't he, because he's got Julian Morris in the number 10 car behind him.
Yeah,
that's 2 cars. Yeah,
that smoke we saw at the start of the race, I'm sure has seasoned the exhaust nicely, so he can it won't be a non-stick by the end of this race. And but yeah, that's clearly carried on, and sometimes you get that, don't you, with a bit of residue. And but this battle is still pretty close, isn't it? It's it's sort of ebbed and flowed a bit. I feel like it separated and now it's come back together. Yeah. But this battle here with Morris, going to get a move done at the last corner. No, he's going to try and set it up to potentially turn 1 on Wilson. Yeah, he's got one more lap really in which to do it. Might be 2, depending on where Mark McAleer was as the clock was counting down. But Pete Morris in the 997 jinks to the left-hand side of Jim Bryan. And is he going to try anything at Ritchie's? He's going to have a go, but Jim Bryan closes off the opportunity. I think they both compromised their exit coming out of that one. Did you see another black and white warning flag there? Oh, that's a spin, and that's an important spin. That is Paul Simpson, who had been leading Class 2 in the early stages. He'd lost the lead of it to Oliver Chatham, but of course, remember, points-wise, they are pretty much identical on points in the championship. Yeah, that's a big championship blow, and it's looked like he'd spun to the inside of the last corner, so potentially either just clipped the curb on the inside or maybe even just been a bit aggressive with throttle application. Don't believe they've got any traction control in these Porsches, or at least not the Boxster S of Simpson. So he's got not dropped a huge amount of time. How much time has he dropped there to? 11 seconds, isn't it? Yeah, 11 seconds. So not really salvageable, but he's still managed to maintain second place in his class. Yeah, so for Mark McAleer, I think he may well possibly be on course, not to absolutely mathematically stitch up the championship, because there's still another race to come later on. He still needs to score points in that, but this is going to put him the best part now of nearly 30 points ahead of Pete Morris in terms of dropped scores being taken into account in the championship. I mean, there's 25 for a win, there's a point for pole position, there's a point for fastest lap still to come up, but the extra points for how many competitors you beat in your, or how many starters there are in your class, we won't know until later on today. But that
is pretty much enough now for Mark McAleer to probably be crowned the Class 1 champion. If not now, then later on today, as long as he just coasts the car to the checkered flag. Bill Caley comes through to finish in second position, with James Caley about to come through and finish in third position. The one good thing, ever looking for positives out of negatives, whilst Paul Simpson had already lost the lead of Class 2, he didn't lose another position as a result of that spin, so ultimately doesn't really affect the amount of points he was going to scoop up in this, which means that in Class 2, I think it's Oliver Chatham now on 3.71 and Paul Simpson on 3.64 potentially.
A close battle over the line between Morris and Brian. Who got that? Let's have a look.
Brian still.
Just though, 1/10 or just over a tenth over the line, so Morris couldn't quite get into fourth place, but top 5 from the back of the field is a good result.
Not bad, considering that it could have been tangled up in an instant, could he, on the exit of Palmer on the first lap of the race. A few more cars to work their way over the start-finish line. It looks as though Angus Archer has managed to grab a position and is now ahead of Darren Lebet, the car that he had been busy squabbling with. So here comes Paul Simpson over the start-finish line now. Oliver Chatham, just to confirm, has gone through and therefore is in 8th place, the winner of Class 2 from the car of Paul Simpson, who is 9th, and then Angus Archer, with his hand out of the window, finishes 3rd. He will complete the podium in Class 2 as well, with the final few cars just tricking their way over the start-finish line now, including the number 10 car of Julian Morris, who was always at the tail end of that train, was never that far away, and I think there's probably just one more car to take the checkered flag, because I don't think we've had Tom Atherton over the start-finish line just as yet. So once we get the number 88 Cayman over the start-finish line, then that should be everybody through. And I think there was just the one retirement in the end, which was the car of Cole Hazelton, who we saw pull off. So for Mark McAleer, he'll be pretty pleased with that one. He scored 2 wins at Alton Park. He scored a win last time out at Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit, Festival of Porsche, and he also won at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. So that's 5 wins now so far this season for Mark McAleer, and that now means on dropped scores he is on 375 points. Pete Morris is on 346. What's that, 29 between them? With 25 available for the win, and the points for fastest lap as well to come later on, so it's tight. Mark McAleer claims the win in the first of the Porsche Club Championships with Pirelli races, from Bill and James Caley, who were 2nd and 3rd. Jim Bryan had a busy old race as he finished in 4th place. Pete Morris came from the back of the field almost, nearly got tangled in an incident to finish in 5th place in the end. And then in 6th place it was Chris Dyer and Andy Toon who was there in 7th place. Oliver Chatham was the winner of Class 2 in 8th place, ahead of Paul Simpson, who was leading the class early on but dropped to 2nd and then had a spin. And Angus Archer comes through to complete the Class 2 podium and finish in 10th place overall. In 11th place, it was the number 22 car of Peter Evans. Darren Lebet was there in 12th place, ahead of Paul Seagrave and Julian Morris, who were 13th and 14th respectively. 15th was Brian Richardson, ahead of Tom Atherton, who was 16th, and the last of the finishers, because in 17th place, Cole Hazelton was a non-finisher. Mark McAleer picked up the extra point for the fastest lap of the race as well, and that was a time of 2:03.950. Well, that is it for Porsche racing here at Snetterton for the moment. We do have another race coming up for you later on today for them. That will be taking place at around about 5 to 5 this afternoon. So from everybody here at Snetterton, thanks for joining us, but we'll be back with you for the final race of the championship season later on today. Goodbye.